Well, good morning, those of you who are here already. How is everybody doing today? Heard from Dennis. How about anybody else out there?
Doing good. Just multitasking here.
Morning, Vicky. I see a couple people are still connecting to audio here, so well, as people are connecting here, I do see that there is some audio issues. So as people are connecting, feel free to jump in. Any buyer needs or listings coming up anybody would like to talk about? I know I'll start. If anybody knows of anything in between Owatonna and Mankato, I'm still looking for the 300,000 range for they're kind of loose on their needs now. They just kind of want something 2+ bedrooms and under 325,000 at this point. So if anybody knows of anything, hears of anything, let me know.
I will. I always find it funny. I got a buddy that used to call me all the time. He'd be like, "What do you got on the market?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I mean, if you go to the MLS, you can find thousands of places."
Yep.
I but sometimes
They
small group
they
like
like the
this will
more
pull something out.
modern houses, so they are a little picky, but they're getting a little more open.
Well, this is our collective group. It's 9 o'clock. I don't know what you had for agenda, Amy, but I wanted to tell everybody the broker question I had yesterday.
Mhm.
Basically, so I got an issue here. I got to set this up so I can have video, but I thought anyways it'd be best to just at least attend. But I don't know you guys. So who was it? Well, Tim called me and he said like all sorts of questions about when a property sells as is, kind of what's your ability? And I don't know what anybody's thoughts are. Everybody might just be logged on and trying to do their own work right now. But what he said is he goes like, "Could I negotiate?" I mean, they said it's as is, and I'm like, well, yeah. So the impact and when it's as is just means they don't want to do any work. So they're not interested in calling up repairmen and contractors and doing anything. So it doesn't mean that if you go look at the house and you have an inspection contingency that you can't come back. That maybe show them something that the inspector found that they didn't know was there. You know, just because you agreed on the price doesn't mean that you have to take the property at that price and they're not going to fix anything. They're just saying they don't want to fix anything. And you probably come back and negotiate a price that fits what the property is. And then, if there are multiple offers and the buyers want to write an offer with no inspection contingency, that's their own problem or fault or, you know, I guess risk. So this particular case, I was like, just put an inspection in there, and if they find anything out, they can renegotiate it. And if they don't want the property, they can walk away. So it doesn't lock them in, and it still gives people the right to do an inspection and time to complete it and a time to evaluate the whole situation, and then just decide if the price is right for them based on the property being as is. So
And
that was
then
my thing for today. Yeah.
yeah, and I actually have the as is addendum pulled up here. Um, because it does say in the event the seller has completed and buyer has received a seller's property disclosure statement, do not use this addendum without first seeking legal advice. Because I had a client ask me about that at one point. I said, yes, you can seek legal advice, but it kind of explains it in the paragraph here that they're waiving their rights. And that's after the inspection has happened where they are okay with the property, that they're waiving their rights, and that the seller shall have no liability with the condition of the property. Is that correct?
Perfect.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we did have a couple others hop on here. Do we have any other buyer or seller needs now that everybody's on here?
I have I guess, a curious question in regards to that, Andrew. So the property has an as is, they're saying as is. Can you still sign that form and still do the inspection contingency on the side?
Yeah, I think that's what we just. Yeah, I
Just
think
kinda-
that's what. Yeah, I think that's what we just kind of said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That yeah, you could go forward. That's the confusion, right? Exactly
Yeah.
what you're asking. So when he asked me the question, I was like, kind of thought about it for a second, and then I realized I probably get asked actually about 15 times a year.
Yeah.
So I know that everybody's not tuning in 100%, but that's the whole point, is that just because it's as is, yeah, they just don't want to make repairs. Like, you got grandma's house or something, you're not interested, it was inherited to you, and you don't want to sit around and call contractors to fix a dishwasher and fix a light. He's like, look, buy the thing as is, just tell me what you'll pay for it. That's kind of more, I think, how to perceive it. I think that's the easier way to kind of consider how it's listed for sale.
So just kind of clarifying for my own clarification. So if I say, for instance, I'm listed as is, and that's on the listing, that's one thing. But then having the as is addendum, that protects the seller in a different area, if I'm correct. So like if Randy was selling his house and he said, I know that there's problems and I don't want to disclose those. So I just want to do an as is addendum. So I'm covered that I didn't disclose those and that I knew about them later on. Is that where an as is could be used in that aspect, but still, you as a buyer always have the ability to do the inspection contingency. You find something and you're like, well, I'm not buying it because of this, or can you fix this and then I'll still buy it.
Yeah. Now everybody has to disclose what they have to disclose. So you can't get out of that.
Oh, I think Randy froze there for a minute. One second here. But yeah, I think as Randy was saying, I don't know, it seems
Am I
like
on mute?
oh, there we go. He popped back up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You kind of froze when you were talking there, Randy.
You said
Okay, well,
everybody
I don't
has
know if
to
you can-
disclose what everybody has to disclose, and then you froze.
Oh yeah, so
They won't let him talk.
Zoom says not today. But yeah, I don't think you can still hide those issues, because that's more of an ethics and legal thing. If it gets into the point of
No, I'm not talking as an agent. I'm talking as a seller themselves. If they wanted to cover themselves a little bit more than just doing the alternative disclosure.
well then yes, it does say that. It says we're not going to be held liable for anything, and we don't want to fix anything.
yeah.
The only thing that I brought it up for was because the bigger question, or well, not that I found, was the confusion of whether or not, I guess, like a buyer is stuck all of a sudden, like, oh, I made this offer and maybe they have a contingency on it for inspection, but now we're just stuck, right? They don't want to do anything. That's our deal. I'm like, no, you're still contingent on inspection. You can still walk away. I mean, just understand the person doesn't want to pick up a screwdriver and fix stuff. And that's all they're saying. So if you want to go back after the inspection and say, well, we're going to give you $5,000 less, or we're going to walk away, that's totally you totally have the ability to do that. I have to read the addendum more. Amy, if you have it up, if you want to email it to me, maybe I'll check a clause or two.
Yep.
Which is another thing I wanted to talk about. At the time when I get a call, all we really do is, those boxes are everything's pre-drafted by the the attorneys that the Board of Realtors hires. And then, we check boxes, right? They've kind of made it easy for us. And that's why we pay them our dues, I guess. But, half the time when people call me, we read the 3 sentences before and after the box they checked. And it's like, okay, well, it says right here. And one of the bigger things that I always run into, did we go over this a week or two ago, or do you hit on it for the written disclosure? When there's a financing contingency?
I don't think we went over that. It was maybe brief.
Okay, I wanted to point out a few things, but I might have to go back and get it ready to pull up for everybody. But there's a thing about a written disclosure where it's the lines 109, I think, through 122, or maybe
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's the
Let
financing
me pull that
contingency.
up. Yep.
So I want to make sure everybody knew and understood that. But I'm going to let you, unless anybody wants to throw a question at me quick, I'm going to let you run with whatever topics you had, and then maybe I can look at the stuff in the background.
Okay. Yeah, I just sent you that as addendum as well.
Okay. So that was Dennis asking that question about all the liability issues, right? Dennis? Well, okay, I think it was
Right.
Dennis. I'll go back and check. So I'm gonna just double check. If you could email me that as is addendum. And
Yep,
then,
I just did.
yeah.
So we did have a question last week about out of country or out of state
I'm
buyers.
sorry, I stepped away for a little bit. What was that?
Oh,
That's if
I
you
was just
care.
trying to track you down to see. I was double checking it was you. I'm gonna double check the as is addendum, and then maybe we'll circle back on the whole liability issue. Hey, one more thing before I kind of zone out on a couple other things too. How does everybody feel? And there's only 12 of us on here, and 3 of us are staff. So,
I didn't ask the original questions about the as is, but yeah, whatever. Thanks.
okay. How does everybody feel about understanding when new forms come out? There's resources I wanted to make sure that you knew that you could go to. Sometimes I feel like an agent will rely on us like 100% for the answer, but we all pay dues to the association, and the associations are the ones with the information. And so basically, when you guys sometimes ask something, I go to the association, and a lot of times they won't talk to you, but you do have, everybody has an account with the Minnesota Association of Realtors. And that's where you can log in and see all the information for updated forms. Maybe our local associations like SPAR and MAR do it too, but it's more at a state level. And that's where all the information comes from for contract updates and AB's pulled it up now. So the legal resources and the forms and stuff, every now and then I'll pull a form off of here if I don't want my company's logo on it. Yeah, everybody has access to this stuff. This is our main resources as a brokerage and all the agents to go to. But the thing is, there's so much information out here that, a lot of agents are just like, look, I have a hard enough time trying to find and buy a seller and show them a bunch of houses and, all that stuff. So that's why I guess I'm pointing it out so everybody knows that this is where the information is.
And they also have like a discussions area. So if you do have a question, say if someone's not available on the weekend, you can go to their discussions and try to see if they have the answer in here, because this is a bunch of agents asking questions and getting answers to them as they can. And they're really awesome to talk to. Every time I've called either Minnesota Realtors or SPAR, they've always been able to connect me to where I need to be or answer my question quite quickly. But as I was saying, last week we did have a question about out of country or out of state buyers who have never seen the property in person. And if you're doing the showing for them, whether they waive the inspection or not. as we always say, they should always get an inspection, especially if they haven't seen the property. But again, it's always their choice. But you always keep those communications. So if there is a liability, you're going to be able to show those conversations that the client is actually the one who initiated, no, I don't want an inspection, and that. So the question was if there was any verbiage reducing agent liability. I mean, you're basically covering yourself as long as you're doing your work as you should. It's their choice for not seeing the property and waiving an inspection. And then there was also a question on the forms from last week. If there was anything filled out before August 1st, as long as it's signed and dated before August 1st, they do not need to fill out new ones. It's just everything after August 1st, you need to be using those updated forms. And again, if you still were looking at which forms were updated, that was again back on the Minnesota Realtors webpage and under either legal resources, as I had shown here. I'll pull it back up here.
Yeah, well, I'll make it clear, you should be using the updated forms. There's not, it's not a, you can sell a piece of property on a bar napkin, but using the updated forms is the best way to protect ourselves. Because
Yeah.
everybody's kind of gone over, raked all the problems over the coals, and the attorneys have fixed it and added certain lines of information that help protect us.
So yeah, down here in the forms. And then it does have a list of all of the residential changes, all of the commercial changes, a summary of all the revisions, and then a nice quick 7-minute video showing what the changes are, and it describes them quite well. So again, as Randy said, this is a great place for resources if you have questions and you're not able to get a hold of anybody right away. They even have this find it fast up here, so you can basically go right into anything that you're needing to. So contracts and forms is right there on the top. So this is definitely a great resource. Otherwise, your local association is as well, because they're right there in your area.
And those forms are already on, let's say, on Authentisign or something like that. You can pull them up there.
Yep. So I will pull up that one here. I was just gonna make sure everybody knew how to get to their things here. So let me pull that up. So when you're in your matrix here, it is right at the top under tools and transaction desk. And then on the side here, you can either, if you know the icons, you can use those. Otherwise, you can cheat and see which ones they are. If you go into forms here, you can either go in through the folders. Otherwise, I find it just easy enough to type in up here what I'm looking for, and always make sure that you are looking for this date here. So these are the old forms, the 8 of 2020. These are the new forms, 8 of 23. So just making sure that you're using the most updated recent forms. Now, some people also use the templates. Templates don't automatically update. So when you go into your templates, you are going to need to go in and update the forms. And actually, it does do something where it disables previous forms. So if you do have an older version of the form, you just need to go in there because it's been disabled, and then you delete. And then you can just add your new form as you would. Search it, make sure it is the 2023 version and add it. Otherwise, we had a couple other questions. So there was a lot of confusion about Sweet Assist last week, about how we're supposed to be using it, if we're supposed to be using it, what's mandatory and everything else. Like I said last week, I'm just going to reiterate, we prefer that you use Sweet Assist because you are going to have all of your transactions in one spot. You're going to have access to all of your all of your papers in one spot. And then that way, if there's issues, you can say, hey, my paper's right here. I had it in, and then we can go from there. It's getting to the point where if we're just going to be emailing it off, we're going to have to look into that, because we really want to use Sweet Assist, because not only does it have our calendar, it has all of our documents, it has other, let me just bring it up here.
Well, yeah, I'll iterate on that a little bit. So we're trying to use it as a compass where you can log in easily. I wanted our nrgadmin.com email to forward to this because I don't want people having to change or keep learning stuff just because the wind blows a certain direction. We pick a technology. I don't, it's kind of hard to require everybody to use it. As a brokerage, we just need you to turn in your paperwork to get paid. And so the system that we use to manage that, kind of up to us. But this thing has tools in here that, it's one of the things when people ask the question on, this or that, or what do you offer? What we're trying to do is build out the answer to that in here so that if anybody just logs into this system, that anything we offer, any training, any tools, any programs, any advice, I guess more or less, it's all going to be in here. The calendar for the stuff. Here's some vendors that I've struck pretty good deals with that you guys can get discounts. If anybody runs into any of this stuff collaboratively, we can pull it together here instead of continue to ask repeated, the same questions of, do you know a flooring guy? Or what time's the next training? So we can just use it as a compass to access avenues to get to things that we want to do.
Yeah, if your client needs radon testing, there's a guy in there for that. The carpet and luxury final floor planking. We have the yard signs entered in there. We have a link to
Does
our.
the yard signs link work?
Let me just double check.
Well, it better, but if it doesn't, there's a woman there named. Let's find out. If it doesn't, we'll fix it. And I appreciate you pointing that out, because we don't know
Yeah,
if
that
something's
one's not
broken until
working.
somebody points it out. So what we need to do is go ask Clark at Sweet Assist, how to make it
Why
so
that
it
link's
works.
not working.
So the woman at the yard sign place, though, like if anybody wants to order that or business cards or buy a hat or a shirt, she will walk you through it.
That's build a
as
sign.
our
That's
representative.
a build
Yeah.
a sign. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, if that
Welcome.
link's not working, you can always go to the NRG 100. It'll bring you up to our main page. That as well has a link to Sweet Assist, if you need a link to Sweet Assist, but it also has that Build a Sign store, as well as our meeting link. And if you also have anybody that is thinking about going into real estate or would like to join NRG, we have our Join NRG site as well on there. So
Can you
that.
please put on your note to fix the Sweet Assist so it works?
Yep.
Oh yeah,
So
Kara
yeah, I
Hammond
always
with it.
just remember this NRG 100, and this will get me to all of the things that we need, especially Sweet Assist, because once you click the login to Sweet Assist, it'll bring you right over to Sweet Assist. You can access your calendar, all of your transactions, this marketplace that we're going to be continually adding things to. If you needed any office documents like letterhead, a referral form, the Tisch guide, there's so many resources in here that using Sweet Assist isn't mandatory, but it's necessary if you want to grow and be able to use all of your things as well. If you have a different CRM software, I would look into the integrations, see if they do go in. These Zaps are pretty good, but otherwise, again, it had that link to our CE shop NRG page. So keep an eye out on emails from Jeremy when we have 30 to 40% off on those as well. And then let me see here. There was a question about adding a lender or like a closer in Suite Assist. There should be, I tried to mess around with it myself. I'm going to talk to Clark about making sure that's in there correctly, where you can add them for yourself or add them from our database. We typically use Guardian Title and title specialists. And if you have any other title companies that you really like, just run them by Randy, and then we can try to get them approved and in the system for other agents as well. Any questions?
Yeah, we'll find out more in detail, because if you continue to use the same person, we're pretty sure that you can auto-populate their information. Whoever asked the question, I think, or none of us know how if we haven't done it, but I'm pretty sure you can do it now. So we'll get an answer from Clark on how you can auto-populate your favorite title company or mortgage officer or something. And then you can do it in your own system, or in your own login. As a company, we're probably gonna try to work with a few people, and yeah, like Amy said, you can recommend somebody and then we'll determine whether or not it's a fit. But we use Guardian a lot because we've just known them for 20 years, and then we take advantage of them to pay for food and stuff at our stuff, because they also have the ability to pay somebody at the closing table without having to turn in the paperwork to us, because they'll do it for you, but we won't let them do it unless the paperwork's complete. But you actually don't have to wait for the money to come to the brokerage. It can go right from them to you. And then Mario at Title Specialists and all those people, they seem to do a pretty good job. And with them speaking Spanish and stuff like that, it helps for about a handful of our producing agents. So
yeah, and they're the ones that have been helping out with a lot of the events. Guardian Title hosted our holiday event. Mario at Title Specialist has hosted quite a few of our learning events, which next week, instead of online, we will be having an in-person from 1 to 3 at the St. Louis Park location. We will be having agent orientation as well as a Chime kind of get to know your systems. So not only am I going to be going over Chime mostly, if you have questions with Suite Assist or anything else, just kind of wanted to be in person and ask questions and kind of help get through some of the questions and make sure everything's set up in there. I'll be at the St. Louis Park location from 1 to 3 with some chips and some cookies, just kind of making sure everybody knows how these systems are working and kind of getting an in-person hands-on training for that.
What day was the Chime training?
Next Tuesday from 1 to 3, we'll have in person instead of online.
Oh, awesome. And then as far as getting set up on Chime, should I send like an email to you or Francis or?
Yeah, if you wanted to send one to Francis, we can get you set up, and then that way we can get you ready to go for next week, and we'll be able to get your smart plans and everything set up next week.
Yeah, that'd be
What do
great.
you
I was
do now?
actually just gonna
Because
ask
I
about
have
Chime.
questions on that too, because I got set up, but I'm just kind of confused a little bit on there.
who's
Yeah,
that?
That's Andrew.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to pull up the thing where I can see who's talking on my thing. But who was just asking the other question before you? Was that Dennis?
Jeff.
That was
Yeah,
me.
so you two
Jeff.
guys and everybody. I mean, Tim asked me yesterday. He goes, "Well, I kind of got set up on Chime, but I'm not really seeing any leads and stuff." And I'm like, Chime is like the seat, right? It gives you the website on the front end, the back end.
Oh, I lost you.
Oh no.
Oh, no. Randy, we lost you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I got too much going on. Am I back?
Yep.
Okay. I might have to. I think.
Chime is the seat.
Yeah, Chime's a seat, and it gives you guys all the power to do your stuff, but it doesn't just automatically create leads. So I've had people jump on there thinking that I don't know what they're thinking, but it's just a website, right? And it's just a CRM, but Chime has, if anybody wants to spend a little money, you know, Chime will manage a campaign that will be productive if you manage it right with them. I think $400 is their minimum though. And I did mention, you know, periodically listings to leads, right? If anybody's heard of it, it's like L2L or listings, the number 2 leads.com. That website or that company's been around for a long time and they can produce leads for a lesser amount. So if somebody just wants to put their toe in the water and start to learn how to do some advertising, listening to leads is going to be less money, but the Chime system is the real thing where they're actually gonna, well, it's not, I mean, Chime's just doing this. A part of their department will do this for you, you know, is help you run ads on Google or Facebook. But they want you know, $100 to do it and then $300 minimum ad spend, because that, you know, you got to have something out there, otherwise you just gonna be like, this don't work. I mean, if you get 12 internet leads, it's probably not going to work, you know, but when you're going through 30 and 40, you know, one of
Oh,
them
yeah.
are going to pop. Yeah. And that's the business plan. But so Chime is Andrew, I don't know what, you know, God, the thing has tons of training videos, you know, but you
Yeah, I
know,
saw that.
it might be good to pop up, you know, next week.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
I'm doing that because it's just, I mean, I'm reading some of the stuff, but it's still a little confusing when you're going through some of it. And I'm trying to figure out because I'm paying the $30, so I'm guessing that's the subdomain. But then I paid something additional, which is seems like it's not working to create another main domain. I have no idea. So I want to figure it out. I want to sit down with somebody. I tried calling Chime and they just kept on directing me to the tutorials. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. I want somebody to sit down. I want to figure out how
yeah,
and how we can make it work, how you guys can help me basically. Chime,
yeah.
help.
So I think since we decided as a company to go with the Chime kind of thing, you know, I mean, it's very robust, it's high quality, it's one of the best. So then that's the benefit of if you do get involved with it, that I mean, we can do some local help too. So that's why Amy's doing this, but you got to show up, you know. I mean, oh, she could probably do something with you before if you can't make it, like through Zoom. But you know,
We would
make
just
sure that you understand like what you're saying, the subdomain. I have to look at that myself, and we can do that on a different meeting. But yeah, so thanks for raising your hand on that. We'll just have to make a sidebar and then we'll get with you on the side and do something about it.
Sounds like a deal.
Sweet.
And I just put my email address in the chat bar for everyone. So if you do have any questions and you're not able to make the meeting next week, just send me a question. We'll try to set up a time and I can Zoom with you, and then you can share your screen and we can kind of do it that way. It's just easier in person because I can easily look at, okay, well, what do we got here? And it's just a lot easier in person, but it's doable over Zoom if that's what we need to do.
Sounds like a lot of overhead. Is there any way we could like record your presentation on Tuesday and then people could watch that if you weren't available?
I don't know how that's going to happen or who's going to do it. She's standing in a conference room.
Okay,
You know what I
all
mean?
right.
Yeah,
I
it's
just-
gonna be kind of
I don't want to
individual
over promise
questions.
something.
Sure.
I was thinking the same thing, but it's gonna be hard
Who's
because
going to do
even
it?
if, well, that, and even if I set up like a tripod in the back of the room, I'm not gonna be able to, it's just gonna be like a wide angle of me helping people. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably
we were
best
kind of thinking about
one-on-one.
that, but it'd be too hard.
Yeah. Where's Max? Max sent me this thing. I got about 3 people trying to blow up my phone. That's why I keep um
I see Max is on the call.
I know I wanted him to, I'm trying to send something he sent me last night to show you guys. It's pretty cool. I shouldn't even be doing this, but I'm just, it's so cool. I was like, that's so cool. He came up to my place last week. It was hotter than heck out. We went on a pontoon for an hour and he showed me something and then he made me this logo thing. And I don't know if he'll share how he does it so people can do it with their own stuff or not, but I sent it to Amy to show on the screen so that you guys could see this. What else is on the agenda though? So we keep moving forward with what we have.
Yep, I was trying to find that. line 109, there it is. Let me just share my screen here. So this is what Randy was talking about, the financing contingencies. So it is lines 103 through 111. If it's refunded to the buyer or retained by seller, if you're representing the buyer, you're always going to want it to be refunded to the buyer. With VA, some VA and FHA, sometimes getting retained by the seller is not available. So just make sure that you're reviewing and asking, working with your lender and making sure that if you are trying to strengthen your offer by saying something can be retained by the seller after a certain point, be sure you're protecting your buyer and that they know that if this doesn't go through, that they are going to lose their earnest money. Otherwise, I typically always just refund it to my buyer if I'm representing a buyer. Was there something else you wanted to touch on there, Randy?
I'm just responding to like 4
Okay.
people that are on a new construction job here. So that have to do with the financing contingency?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's whoever you represent, the box you want to check. But a lot of people don't understand how written disclosures work. So I wanted to point out the lines, I think they're lines 102 to 129 or something. But I don't have the resources to do that. I got too much going on here and didn't
Okay.
plan for it, so.
Okay. I just know you had mentioned that, so.
Yeah, so maybe next week we could touch on that or somebody pulls it up quick. But it's, people don't understand how the written disclosure works from a lender all the time, but you have to just read the paragraph before and the paragraph after. Everybody, I guess, keeps checking boxes, and I get in 1 week I had 3 calls on the same issue, so that's why we're bringing it up. But I kind of got to handle something else right now, and we have to just discuss it when I have.
Yep. No.
What else is on the meeting for the Zoom?
Uh,
For the-
I was gonna see, being we had a few more people join in that weren't at the beginning of the meeting, if anybody else had any buyer or seller needs or any other questions. Otherwise, yeah, I was just bringing that up here.
I'll shoot one more question. So I wrote an offer. This property, I guess, is under a cancellation of a previous purchase agreement. How long do they have to have that cancellation presented? Because I'm still waiting on this case. They reviewed our offers, but they can't say, he said, like, I'm at a standstill. I'm still waiting for the buyer to give us the cancellation. So I'm just wondering, and he said he's got his broker involved now, but I'm just wondering, how long do they have?
They don't have a line time. There's nothing in law that gives that requires an amount of time.
Got it.
So it's only written as a reasonable amount of time, and that's totally discretionary. So
Got it.
if you can't do that, then you got to go forward with the statutory cancellation, right? Which requires an attorney,
Got it. Okay.
and it's roughly $1,500 probably.
And Andrew, you're talking about this line here. So you're waiting on them that they have a previously executed. Do you have anything in writing in these boxes? Or
I have not, no, I do not have anything in writing in there. I left
Okay.
that blank because I was not aware of any of that information. So
Okay.
I'm like, you know what? Nope, let's leave that blank and have the seller do that.
Okay, because yeah,
Or
I've
the
had this
agent.
happen with some of my buyers. We would be a backup offer, but the agent really wanted the purchase agreement filled out. So I always usually enter in like a date no later than I typically try to ask them, well, when are you trying to close? So if they're trying to close August 30th, I'll say a cancellation should be obtained no later than August 30th.
Got it.
But that's kind of what this section for the additional provisions is if they do have a purchase agreement that needs to be canceled, I try to be like, no, I need you to decide within 2 weeks here. Otherwise, I'm going to be going on to the next house, because you're also wasting your buyer's time. There's how many houses that you could have went and seen, but you're kind of locked up in this because you're waiting to see if there's a cancellation or not.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you gotta
These are-
determine how hot the property is and whether or not the seller needs to, how much slack you need to give them and then put in a date so they can close this out. Most
Yeah,
commercial offers, everybody would fill this out, for sure.
got it.
It's just
And
how
these are
aggressive you
buyers
wanna
that
be
are-
with your
They
offer.
were interested, they were looking in Richfield, Richfield and Bloomington for 250, but there's nothing in that area for that price. And I've been kind of showing them like, here's other areas, just in case if this property in North Minneapolis showed up, that's perfect for them. 4 bedrooms with a basement that's pretty much set up for another apartment. So they liked it, and it's nice. It's a nice property, so they're waiting. I mean, it's only been 3 days now, but I'm just wondering how long should I wait?
Yeah, it's starting to
Kinda
get
talk
like
to
the
my
person
buyer.
might have had multiple offers and they're just not getting back to you because they're overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Happened a lot of times with the foreclosure properties. All of a sudden you got 20 offers, like I'm not gonna call everybody back. I'm just, don't have time, but you better follow up with them.
mhm. Thank you.
Cause you want your offer done so you can get these buyers out of the back of your car and move on. So just
Correct.
follow up and see what you can do or move it along, but yeah, there's no timeline.
Oh, yeah, so this is what we were talking about with the financing contingency. As the forms overview said, they added the or because there was a lot of confusion. I'd see numerous purchase agreements where both of these are checked, neither of these are checked. It's just so many different variations. So it's either or. So it's either lines 70 through 75 or lines 77 all the way down to 112. So these, I'm like so those 2 sections are separate from each other. So either the buyer can secure the financing, or it's either refunded or forfeited to the seller. And I always like to talk with the lenders on written statements because they're going to know when they're going to be able to provide a written statement. If you just throw any random date in here, you're kind of setting yourself up possibly for failure, because you don't know, if you're not talking to your lender and communicating with all these people, you don't know when that written statement's going to be. And as it says here, a written statement means a written statement prepared by the buyer's mortgage originators or lenders after the final acceptance date that the buyer is approved for the loan specified in the purchase agreement, including first mortgage and subordinate financing, if any, stating that an appraisal satisfactory to the lenders has been completed, or the lenders have waived the appraisal, stating the conditions required by the lenders is clear to close. So basically it's gone through the whole entire process and it's clear to close. So sometimes they're not even going to have that, especially if you're going 30 days out. They might not have that till that week before. So I always, if I'm writing it as a written statement, I'm always talking with that lender and always communicating with that lender. Hey, how are we doing? A lot of lenders nowadays have like a platform that you can view where everybody's loans at and what's been completed and what's not. Sometimes you do have to get on lenders to make sure, hey, are these things getting done on time? But yeah, I always am in contact with their lender pretty much the whole exact time. And so then if you're trying to strengthen your offer, that's when these lines down here, whether they're going to be retained by the seller or refunded to the buyer. And that's kind of to do with the last question that was being, in the event the seller declares the purchase agreement canceled, they'll sign the purchase agreement as it is if the written statement was not provided by that certain day. So that's why it's very important, if you're doing a written statement, to make sure you're on the same page with that lender. Did we have any questions on written statements or the financing contingency?
As far as those lines 70 through 77, let's say 70 and 77. Is it choosing either or?
Yep, so that's
Right.
why they added this or for line
Yeah.
76, because there was a lot of confusion. So either you just want to make it easy, and if they can't secure the financing specified in the agreement, it's going to be canceled. Otherwise, I know with one of our offers on my Owatonna people, we have done a written statement, but like I said, I'm in constant contact with their lender, and I always put refunded to the buyer, because at least then they're protected. But yeah, at least then the seller is knowing, okay, well, I'm gonna know that this loan is gonna close on this day. So even if it's closing a week or two later, they're gonna have a written statement saying everything is good to go, clear to close on whatever date I'm putting in this box. But if you just want to be on the easier side and just, if the securing can't be secured, this would be the one you would want to
Damn
do,
it.
and that you would want to refund it to the buyer.
Yeah, if
Mhm.
anybody writes a purchase agreement for a buyer, this is obviously your first choice. If there's no hurdles to jump over, it's done deal. They don't get financing, it goes back to the buyer. So if you're a listing agent, you have to watch out for this, because it's the worst thing you can do as a listing agent. I
Out
mean,
of curiosity, I just want to know who would choose forfeited to the seller option? In what scenarios that would be chosen?
well, the seller would choose it.
Okay.
The buyer would say it goes to me, the seller would say it goes to them. I mean, if I was representing a seller, I would say, if you jerk me around for 60 days and cannot close on my house, then I get your money, right? And if you're the buyer, you're going to try to get the buyer to sneak by with it. But I think it's almost an insult to take a buyer, right, and take a seller's house off the market for 60 days and not close and get their money back.
Correct.
So it's up to you guys to negotiate. It's nice that it's there. Pretty soon it probably won't be, but I mean, that's why everybody goes to the next box and tries to explain further between what lines 91 there or 90.
Yeah,
Okay.
so some people will say put this one, then
If I
they'll,
represent a buyer, that's what I do.
yeah.
I'll check the first one and the next one, because that's going to get them their money back. But then, the next option, you're going too far down. I can't handle this. So yeah, you pick the next option. So line 77, that's when you get into this whole written statement stuff that a lot of people don't understand. I mean, but if you can write an offer or you represent your buyer, do line 70 and check refunded to buyer. If the listing agent doesn't catch it, you're golden.
Yeah, otherwise, yeah, you're doing the written statement there. But as it says down here a little further, there is the FHA escape clause, as I was explaining earlier, that some FHA and VA, it would be refunded to the buyer as well.
So look, any other option outside of that, checking that box, is about a 10-minute conversation. And you got to just read through lines 77 to like 102 or whatever it is. And I guess further down 112. If somebody reads that whole thing, you'll understand it further. But that is all to kind of weaken up the buyer's position and give the seller some options. And that's why we normally do it, because sometimes if you are in a competitive situation, you have to be more seller friendly. And then this helps do that, telling them you're going to give them written statements, you know, but we have to talk about this for 10 minutes. I got about 7 people to call. I'm gonna have to jump off the huddle. So, you know, but I want you guys, I don't want you to have misinformation. Either read it on your own or we can go over it next week because there's some detail in here that I continue to get calls about.
Yeah,
I just have
and
some people that need my attention right now too.
And as we said, yeah, reading through the few lines ahead of and behind, you see kind of as the next lines start. So as long as you're reading the lines that are in there, you'll kind of understand what they're doing for those things there. So do we have any other questions on the financing contingencies?
Amy, this is Lynn, and I have one question where Randy's talking about representing the seller. I understand where he's coming from now when things get tied up. Say there's a party that they've sold their house and they are removing their contingency and their house deal falls through. That changes that scenario for the buyer or seller for the house they're buying as far as their contingency. So it's another consideration when you're representing the buyer or seller. If they're coming from an apartment, it's one thing. If they have sold their starter home in Camden and are moving over to Columbia Heights, and their deal falls through, all of a sudden that changes that scenario. As far as removing their contingency, if they've removed the contingency already, it's just a normal fall through.
Which contingency are you removing? Because there's a few things that you could do with that transaction that because usually when you have to sell a property in order to buy a property, I always have my clients put that contingency, like the successful close, on their property. So
Right. Well, that's another little gray area. Yeah, as far as cancellations.
yeah, so I mean there is forms that is in the MLS. I guess I don't fully understand your question.
Well, I'll think about it, and if we are going to address this contingency thing again next week, and I have the ability to come and present it in a more formal manner, explaining what I'm trying to say. I don't know how many times you have like a train wreck of properties or a line of contingencies that are removed, like 3 transactions in a row.
Yeah, because we have this addendum to purchase agreement, sale of buyer's property contingency. So it has the purchase agreement dated of the purchase that you're making, pertains to the property sale at their sale, and where it's currently listed, or if it's going to be listed and within how many days. And then anything on other. So it does have in here failure to remove contingency. If seller demands removal, buyer does not timely remove the contingency, this purchase agreement is canceled. So I mean there are all the forms. You're just needing to make sure that you're getting all the addendums and forms that you're needing for that specific transaction.
Right. But so they do need to disclose that it's subject to the successful closing of their home and that
Yes.
they get their earnest money back.
I think
Yeah,
that's on
so-
the purchase agreement. I think this is just an addendum you can have with the purchase agreement that you can remove, but then it just relies back on the original purchase agreement. It's just that contingency portion is removed on that addendum.
But if you're, it should be, shouldn't it be mandatory that if you are representing the buyer, that you need to disclose that they have a house to sell and they're selling their house and
That's on the purchase agreement that when you're,
Yeah, so that's line like 200 and some here. Let me show you. So down all the way at the bottom here, seller's contributions. Okay, so you got sale of buyer's property. So this is the sale of their property. So either they're going to have a sale contingency, or they're going to have the purchase agreement is contingent upon the successful closing of the buyer's property, and then it would have their address, which is scheduled to close on the date that it's scheduled to close on. So if the buyer's property does not close by the specified closing date, the purchase agreement is canceled.
So
So
I was explained one time that when you check box 1 and 1 is completed, so let's say, you know, Amy offered, you know, we had the purchase agreement, everything else, it naturally goes into box 2. Once box 2 is completed, then it goes to box 3. You don't have to check each box. It's when you check box 1, it automatically goes from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. That's how it was explained to me once.
one moment here.
I see R in between, so it's one of these three. You see R on 201
Yep.
and
Oh,
210. It's
I
R.
do. I'm kind of wondering if it was done by the brokerage that I worked for that changed it then, because I don't know. I do see the or, but it was explained to me that once 1 is done, it goes to 2. Once 2 is done, it goes to 3.
but that would,
Maybe that's just kind of in effect, because once the sale happens, then, you know, then it just kind of rolls on down.
Yeah, so if you check number 1, that means you need to fill out this form. So that is, say the buyer needs to sell their home, but doesn't have it listed. They can't fill out this box number 2 because they don't have a date, or whether they have it listed and don't have an offer possibly. So they can't fill out this number 2. This number 1 is where you would then go, hey, I'm going to be listing within 21 days, and then their property. And then that's where they're using this contingency. Otherwise, if they have it on the market and already have an offer, you can easily just, instead of having to fill out that other form, you can easily do this or number 2. So it's contingent upon the successful closing of their property at the address that they're doing. And that would mean that they'd have a purchase agreement already signed, and ready to go with a closing date already in mind. So then you would put the closing date that they're closing their property. Otherwise, if they don't need to sell their house, if they're doing like a bridge loan or in an apartment or whatnot, then the buyer doesn't need to sell or close on any other property that they have the financial ability to perform the purchase agreement as is.
You know, out of curiosity, line 99, option 1, when they say sale of their property, does that mean that it is like closed?
Which line? I'm sorry.
199, sorry.
190. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Purchase agreement is subject to an addendum to purchase agreement, sale of buyer's property contingency for the seller's buyer's property. So then if you are checking that, you're going to need to make sure that you have this other form completely filled out.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Did we have any other questions on that? I see a couple things in the chat here.
Amy,
Yep.
I'm wondering where it says if the deal falls through that, on line 24, seller shall immediately sign a cancellation of purchase agreement confirming said cancellation and directing all earnest money paid to be refunded to buyer. I think that was, that leaves a little hole like Randy was talking about, you know, with the terminology. What does immediately mean? Somebody might think it's 30 days, somebody might think it's 3 days, or somebody thinks it's this afternoon, run over and get that signed immediately. You know what I mean? I think that was a mistake on the attorney's part not to tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, that would probably be something for Minnesota realtors, but they would probably like suggestions on paperwork, because I mean they redo these paperworks every year. So it just says, because usually if I am not understanding, I read the whole thing. So if the buyer removes this contingency for the sale of buyer's property, this purchase agreement becomes contingent upon the successful closing on the buyer's property. If
So
the buyer-
that's exactly, right there is exactly where it's stating that it goes from number 1 to number 2 automatically, once you remove this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you don't, because if you're gonna go through the number 1, number 2, number 3, so this is the initial.
Yep, what I'm saying is when you check number 1 and you fill that out and you remove that addendum to purchase agreement, you can see on line 21 where it says this purchase agreement, once you remove it, this purchase agreement becomes contingent upon successful closing of buyer's property. So it drops right down into line 2,
Yep, exactly. So yeah.
is all I was
So-
trying to say.
Yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, exactly. So that's where you would not necessarily fill out line number 2, but in the process of the transaction, it does go to the, okay, they've removed the contingency. Now it is on the successful closing of this property as well.
Yeah, as the listing agent, I wouldn't like this because it automatically refunds the money back to the buyer. So I'd want to do different language in that. I wouldn't accept this as an offer.
But you have to be careful with that because, like what Randy was saying is regarding the financing. If you're doing an FHA or a VA, or maybe even some insured conventional loans, they make it mandatory that earnest money goes back to the buyer. You don't have the option of negotiating that for your seller to
Yeah, it's
keep.
just another reason not to accept FHA and VA, right? I mean, there's plenty of them.
Well, that's interesting. Today, I think bringing this to the table is so important because we're in a situation where, with this little recent quarter hike by the Federal Reserve recently, when they did that, and they're anticipating one more before the end of the year, they're bouncing a lot of buyers out of their original financing with the lender. That's getting them in a position where they have to cancel. They don't meet the qualifications anymore. And we're seeing a lot of foreclosure or buyers having the lenders really tighten up the screws where they'll say, I'm exaggerating here a little bit, but they'll say, you know what, once we ran your credit report, we recognize after reviewing it again that you made a late payment 3 years ago on your MasterCard. And we're going to have to cancel the deal because now with this quarter hike, it's just too risky for us to give you a loan. I think we're going to see a lot of lenders tightening the belt and a little too tight where these deals. I don't know, Amy, how many deals do we have that are canceled because the buyers don't qualify anymore? This contingency.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that. That's not something I really follow, but I think we're kind of getting a little off topic here, and it is rolling up on 10 o'clock. So yeah, if you had any questions or anything you wanted to go over next week, feel free to email me. My email was in the chat box. So if you had any questions further or had any topics you wanted to go over for next week, just let me know, and we can definitely do that. Otherwise, was there any last minute questions or concerns that anybody else needed to go over?
No, thanks for running the meeting again, Amy. Did a great
Yeah.
job.
Have a great week. Thanks.
Perfect, and we'll see everybody in person next week for an orientation and chime and systems update.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Everybody have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.